I love to cook at home, and having good kitchenware makes all the difference in the world. Not only does good equipment make prep and cooking easier, but it makes it more enjoyable. This is why I am a huge fan of Made in Cookware. Their wide range of cookware, from pots and pans to knives and flatware and even glassware, are designed to be professional quality for right in your home. I myself have over a dozen pieces from Made In, including pots, pans, pizza steel, knives, and a beer glass. Yeah, beer glassware. They have that all. Take your cooking to the next level by upgrading your cookware by going to unitedwedrink.com/madein. That's MADEIN. Find out why pros like Grant Achatz, Sean Brock, Nancy Silverton, and Eric Repair trust Made In. Go to unitedwedrink.com/madein and upgrade your kitchen and cooking today. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the last podcast you'll ever listen to. Foreshadowing?
Morbid.
I don't know. Welcome to United We Drink right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and I am happy to be in the ho-ho-ho holiday season, my favorite time of the year. And with me, as always, is the man, the myth, the proud and honored to be here. I can't remember your saying. It's Kevin Abbott.
I had
Honor
to
and privilege. That was it.
I had to abandon that because you would say it for me every single episode. So why repeat it? Mike, I do want to point out that you started this recording. Usually you take a beat for like a second. You shocked me. And for a second, I forgot where I was. I forgot what I was doing. And I just wanted to point that out. So if I'm a little bit flustered right now, I mean, I probably am every single episode. But if I am more so, it's all because of you.
Kevin, you're in Boca Raton. You are recording a podcast, which is a kind of radio-like thing, but for children.
I've heard about the radio.
So, Turkey Day is beyond us. We're coming out of our tryptophan comas, possibly, maybe, and ready to get festive here. So much so, I am drinking actually, this is my second celebration of the season. I just bought my first 6-pack today and had one earlier. God, I love this beer so much. I love it, love it, love it, love it. And you know what? It tastes the same that I remember it being every single year. And I think that's such a great testament to quality.
Did you actually say the name of the beer, or did you just show it to the camera?
No, I think I said celebration.
I wasn't really listening to you, but so I just want to make sure.
I am 25% sure I said celebration.
Okay. By the way, I do have a 6-pack at the brewery. You never answered me about doing my old favorite for the old favorite Friday. I texted you in the middle of the week, a week or so ago. I know you're in parent mode 24 hours a day, so I don't blame you. But I bought a 12-pack of Celebration to do that with you a couple weeks back. It's all gone. The people at the brewery have gone through it. They've drank it. So I had to go back out and buy another 6-pack and hide it this time. So if there's any advertisement we could make for Sierra Nevada Celebration, you can't keep it on the shelves, even when other people, even when it's not theirs, they will take it.
There is literally 2 places in West Palm Beach that I can purchase Celebration to go. There's Whole Foods, and there is a little gas station that randomly had. I looked up on their beer finder. And I was like, all right, after I leave work today, I'm going to go pick up a 6-pack of this because I need to have it. And I was like, really? There's only one place on my way home, like between Boynton Beach and West Palm Beach. This gas station is the only place that has it. It's fucking bizarre to me. No Publix is around have it.
Total Wine and More by me and Boca had a huge stacker 2 weeks ago. Stacker's gone. There's still some 12 packs on like an ILN cap, maybe 6 or 7, but they must have gone through 20 cases in the last 2 weeks. They're moving that beer.
Did they do cans for the 12 packs this year?
That's what I got.
Okay.
I got cans. I got a 12 pack of cans, a 6-pack of cans, and I saw one 12 pack of bottles.
Okay.
That were there as well that I was eyeing until I found the cans. Just because they're easy to transport and stuff.
I think that last year was the first year for cans and they only did 6-packs. And then this year they brought out the 12 packs of cans as well. Someone can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't care. But God, this fucking beer is so damn good. And I look forward to it every year. I also have a little glass of, it's called Redwood Estate. It's a bourbon from Sonoma, California, and it's not bad. I just was in the liquor store last week and saw it. It was I think a $35 bottle, and I was like, yeah, I'll swing that on trying a new bourbon. Not bad for the price. What are you having, Kevin?
I've got a bottle of Barrel of Monk's 2022 Grand Cru, which was Belgian Golden Strong Ale. It's basically a love letter to Duvel, which was the beer that we did on Old Favorite Friday last week for a Barrel of Monks, or 2 weeks ago, depending on when this episode comes out. And it's just a very simple Belgian Golden Ale, straightforward. I thought it made sense for our topic today.
I did see the weird looking glass that you have a whole lot of foam in there. So you're definitely pulling off the Duvel head on that beer.
I mean, it's bottle conditioned. It's really nice lacing and everything to it. I mean, I love bottle conditioned beer. You know, I'm a carbonation guy, and it is as much as of the cans we're doing, and as much as I do love the beers that we're putting out. I mean, this is my passion. I love going back to these very simple, clean, dry Belgian triples, essentially.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, nothing beats a fantastic, highly carbonated Saison on a summer afternoon. So I'm right there with you. All right. So Kevin came up with an idea for today's episode. Something that has kind of been a joke on the podcast before, and been just something that pops up every now and then as a bane of our existence, but decided to let's actually do a little bit of a deep dive on it. So Kevin, tell us what we're doing.
Yeah, so as Mike said, we probably touch on the adjunct beers and the proliferation of adjunct beers in the way of smoothie sours, pastry stouts, kind of the over-the-top beers that we're seeing more and more in the market, at least that the craft beer nerds and the craft beer culture is so strongly for and pushing. And probably every show, one of us makes a jab at those styles or talks about how we prefer simplicity and classic styles. And even when we had Kelly Meyer on, we talked about it for a little bit. It's a kind of a thread that runs through a lot of our conversations. But I thought that it would be interesting to have a conversation about what we actually like about adjunct beers, where our history comes from, as far as I can speak for myself. Mike, I think you're there with me. I was drinking a lot of the beers and making a lot of the beers that other people were saying weren't beer 10 years ago. Now I'm not really attracted to the beers that I don't think are beer 10 years later. And there's some hypocrisy there. So I wanted to address some of that and just talk about adjuncts we like, the proportions, and some of the things we don't like, and discuss it kind of at length.
Yeah. So there's some people who would believe you are the person who created the adjunct beer.
Well, those people are probably close friends of mine who are trying to poke fun at me. Obviously, that's not true in any way, shape, or form. The culinary beers from Dogfish Head were the founding principles of the Funky Buddha and doing those kinds of beers. I did make a lot of them, and I have made a career. I would not be at the position I am if it weren't for being involved in maple bacon coffee porter and Last Snow and no crusts and all those kind of things. But it's a perfect place to start there. In fact, let's go to a beer that probably I've mentioned on the show before, but I can't remember. One of the adjunct beers from Funky Buddha that came out just recently, it was a season before this one, the Sweet Potato Casserole, was actually Mike Yurevich's idea. He was the one that pitched that to me while I was at Funky and said, everyone does a pumpkin beer, no one does a sweet potato beer. You should do a sweet potato beer. And that's a beer that was designed really, Mike, with your recommendation and your spark of, an idea. And then we kind of went off and did our thing and found a Tahitian vanilla bean that gave a marshmallow flavor instead of using marshmallows, which we can talk about marshmallows later on in the show, using that in beer these days. But we made a sweet potato beer, and it was over the top, and was over the top in spices and, a big sweet golden ale. And I was long gone by the time that was packaged and made in large quantities. But when we made that beer for the first time and put it out in little corny kegs at the tap room, it was a smashing success, and everyone flipped their lids over it. You had the idea. Were you an adjunct crazy person back in the day, or am I misremembering this?
I mean, I was a member of the whatever the glass club was at the lounge back in the day. So safe to say, yeah, to a certain extent. I probably wasn't as crazy into them as most. Like, I always loved to try what new insane idea that you guys came up with. But more often than not, like, I was just going to, I really enjoyed like your more traditional styles, like the black IPA that you did. You did a take on like a really hoppy amber ale. Like, that stuff really, really got me. But I mean, I would be lying if I said I didn't look forward to trying maple bacon, Wide Awake It's Morning, the Rice Krispie treat beer. I think this was actually after your time. Did you do Red Velvet Cake, or was that Morgan?
That wasn't me. No, I had
that must have been Morgan then. And these beers were good, and they tasted like the thing that they said that they were. I couldn't drink more than maybe one, but I definitely dug them and thought that, hey, this is something new and unique that we aren't seeing in beer.
So I have a question for you, because we do have a situation where our taste can change, right? But also there is as people get older, they tend to really, really latch onto the past. And you can look at this at music, you can look at this in sports, you can look at this in anything. It was better in my day, right? There are still people that say, oh, the pitchers back in my day when I was growing up are so much better than these guys, and the basketball players were better, and no one plays defense, and the movies were better. There's this thread that you always love the stuff of your formative years, and you kind of think everything after it is crap. And I try to fight that all the time because I see it in my dad. I love my dad. He's got great taste in TV and movies and music, but he literally thinks anything that is rap or hip hop related is garbage and not real music, right? And I've always said, well, I don't want to be that when I'm 40, 50, 60 years old. I want to be able to adapt and see the value in new things and be able to not be stuck in my ways. So that's a long way to go around. The fact is, has the industry changed in those kinds of beers, or have you changed?
I think that the industry has changed for sure. I have too. I will not lie that I have changed in this industry, but those types of beers have changed as well because the bases that were used for a lot of the beers back, at least in your time, were like 6% brown ales and porters, where now it's like if it's not over 12% of an imperial stout, at least in the stout way of doing things, a lot of people are like, whatever. The beers have gotten bigger. The base beers have gotten thicker. Um, and then all of the stuff. It just seems like the amount of stuff that's getting put into these beers, whether they're the sours or the stouts or whatever, is become more and more. And just how much can you put in, and then what can you put in to make it crazy and different? You touched on it a little bit earlier. This marshmallow in beer. When I see that on a menu or see it on an Instagram post, I'm like, how the fuck are you doing that? Like, what point of the process are you putting marshmallow in? Because if you're putting it in, like, to me, it only makes sense like hot side, but then you're fermenting a lot of that out. So how are you even, what's the point in having marshmallow other than saying it? You put it in cold side, and that sounds like a fucking mess. Unless you're using extract, or like you've alluded to, and this was a thing that I learned from you over 10 years ago. Like, Tahitian vanilla bean comes across like marshmallow in a beer, and you can just use that. Now, I know vanilla costs a lot, but it doesn't sound as cool as saying that you put marshmallow in your beer.
See, this is kind of where I wanted to get to, because I am so put off by the mere idea of putting marshmallow in a beer, and what you're talking about is correct. It's done in the cold side. It's done in secondary very often. A lot of them must be using sulfates to kill yeast so that you don't have, fermentation going on in these cans on a regular basis. There's some things you can do to stop that, but with all that fermentable sugar being added in at the very end, if Joel was here, he'd go into a rant about all the cans exploding on shelves everywhere. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, because actually you bring up a point there with the sulfites, and this is something that I learned from a former coworker who used to work for a brewery that is very popular in South Florida and makes beers like this. And he's like, "Oh yeah, we use sulfites." I'm like, "You don't have that on like listed on any of your bottles or anything." He's like, "Yeah, I know." And I'm like, "Is this common practice?" He's like, basically everyone who does them right uses sulfites. And I'm like, you know that you legally have to put that on your package if you use sulfites, because people are allergic to that, like that shit. And he's like, yeah, like, so fun fact, everyone, like, if you're allergic to sulfites, be fucking careful who you're drinking beers from, because some of them are just throwing sulfites in there without a fucking care in the world.
So, talking about the marshmallow particularly, because that's the thing that like really put me off to this entire. There are ingredients like that I see on a can or a bottle. Well, it's always a can, on a can, that I go, I'm probably not going to like this, right? And that is one of those things, because I don't want that flavor in my beer. I have no interest into it, and that's when it starts to tip over into the fact of me saying this isn't beer, right? The same thing that Paul Farnsworth, professor of fermentation science, worked for Anchor, worked for Bud, worked for, I think, Miller Coors at one point. Someone who I learned from, who was probably in his late 50s, early 60s when I met him when I was in my mid 20s. Every single thing that I put in a beer, he would make fun of. It didn't matter. Cocoa nibs, he'd make fun of if I put it in the beer, because to him that wasn't beer. And I used to think, and first of all, I learned so much from the guy that I appreciate every bit of input. But in the back of my mind I'm like, this fucking old man doesn't, he's not gonna, he's not with it, right? This is beer. I'm making beer. And when we're talking about that hypocrisy, I guess I look back on what I've done in the past and gone, maybe it wasn't. Maybe no crusts with 3 pounds of peanuts in a 5-gallon keg. Maybe that wasn't really beer. Maybe that was just peanut oil in alcohol, right? And maybe what we were doing or I was a part of, maybe that wasn't okay either. And now we've just gotten to the point where all the over extraction and all the extra sugars added. That's one of the things that really puts me off is the overabundance of sweetness in so many of these beers. One of the things that someone asked me early on about the beers at Funky, and this has nothing to do with what they do now. I've been gone from that company for a very, very long time. But one of the jokes I would make is like, well, why are all your beers taste so much like the ingredient you talk about? I'm like, simple. All of our beers finish at 5 Plato. So no crusts, and it's a brown ale that finishes at 5 Plato. It's left sweet. It's going to enhance any one of those flavors and make them seem like those candy bar flavors because it finished sweet. And now I taste these beers and go, man, what is this finishing at? 8 Plato? It's just sugar on top of sugar on top of sugar. And even when the flavors are nice, they're just cloying and unbearable over the long haul.
There's some of these imperial stouts now that are finishing still in the double digits of Plato, and it's fucking insane. Like 5 sounds like that's easy to drink at this point. And then also some of them are using lactose too on top of that to add more sugar. It's like, all right, you got a 5 Plato beer. You know what? Let's change that. You got an 8 Plato beer that it's finishing with that has lactose in it as well. So you already have a residually sweet beer that has an unfermentable sugar in there. And then you're adding more back sweetness to it with sweet items going. Like the concept of back sweetening is not a new thing with this whole pastry stout adjunct thing. Like, ciders have been back sweetened for longer than the craft beer revolution has been a thing. There's Faro, or back sweetened lambics that have sugar added to them. I know I've had Lindemann's one before. I think at Coffee District, you were probably there, and it's and I mean a lot of those Lindemann's lambics are kind of back sweetened by adding these fruits afterwards that add sweetness to them. So this isn't new territory that we're encroaching on with sweetness, but it's the method used to create it and making it even sweeter than that.
I think that's so important to point out, and that's a great point, Mike. There's nothing new under the sun is a classic phrase, right? You've got things that have been done for a long time just turned up to 11. There's this nuclear arms race to have a bigger dry hopping schedule, a more elaborate and higher ABV, higher residual sweetness. If you put 5 pounds of cocoa nibs per barrel from the last batch, well, we got to do 7 next time, right? We got to announce ingredients like marshmallow that really don't do anything but add sweetness, but it will sell because we say it on the label. There is that heightening effect that we get, but so many of these things are building off of what has been done before. And that's what I was trying to get across to some of my more, and I still do it with my partners at the brewery. I still have Bill McPhee, a partner at Barrel of Monks, who we did a cocoa nib chocolate porter, and he couldn't care about that beer less, right? He doesn't think that's beer in a lot of ways. Even some of the one fruit beers we have where all the sweetness and fruit is put in before fermentation and turn out to be, 2 Plato terminal gravity and really drinkable, he has no interest in. He's a traditionalist in that way. So I have to even though I don't love adjunct beers as much as the next guy, I have to fight for those beers to put them in our portfolio because I know that they're going to be successful. And then I have to trust my team at the brewery to function that in a way that is going to be a good version of those things. And they might not tickle the taste buds of the people who want the over the top stuff, but I think we try to hit those flavor profiles in a layer of complexity with some drinkability in there. And I think we've been pretty successful in doing some of those, and we missed the mark on others because sometimes when you go too light, it doesn't taste like the thing you said it does. And when you go over the top, it's too cloying and undrinkable.
Yeah, and that's a risk that some breweries are more than willing to take. It's the sigh that I let out there is because I feel like I'm in the same situation. The brewery that I'm at, we don't make a lot of those types of beers. We honestly we don't make any of those types of beer. Our imperial stout that we last made, that was brewed, a recipe brewed by an employee who used to work for a hype brewery, is only a 10.5% imperial stout. Like, my boss had some breaks that he put on some of the recipe. It was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this. But I think that the base stout is one of the best imperial stouts we ever made, and it lent itself well to having adjunct stuff done to it. But we don't go balls to the wall like a lot of, like, we do cocoa nibs and coconut for our cocoa for Coxness, and we like a lot of coffee variations on this. We put some of it in barrels and come up with barrel age versions of the beer. But man, if someone were to say marshmallow in our brewery, I'm sure that my boss would probably lose his fucking head. But
That just makes me want to go to your brewery and scream marshmallow and then run away.
and you'll do it on a day that I'm not there, so I can't be like, Kevin did it. Look, I feel like some of this has cooled down a bit. There, at least with the breweries that I follow, and maybe I'm curating my timeline better, but there has been this shift to tradition a little bit more in breweries. Like, lagers are getting big again. Like, you're seeing a lot of breweries doing lagers. Not all of them do them well, but there's focus on that. There's some English style beers that are getting some press again, albeit they're all getting kind of lumped together as pub ale, because there's actually stuff that says that sells better than saying like ESB or mild. And
doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. And even depending on who the brewery is, if it's funny, Treehouse could make a fucking brown ale and people will fucking drink it all up because it's fucking Treehouse. But if we make a brown ale, it's gonna fucking sit on tap for 3 months before it's like, yeah, probably shouldn't have this on anymore. It's fucking ridiculous. But
I mean, there's a lot to be said for that, though, Mike. When you build goodwill in a community of people for your over-the-top beers, they're going to lap up and assume that and I'm not saying anything about Treehouse or anybody else. There are great beers made by hype breweries that are traditional styles, and there are crappy beers made by them too. I mean, they run the gamut. But once you get that reputation, it's the old labeling fallacy, man. If you take, I am 100%. I'm not going to talk about my brewery because that's self-serving. I will talk about yours and say that if you take a random beer from your portfolio, your amber lager, so to speak, which is one of my favorite beers, and not that you don't have great reputation for that and people don't love that beer, because you sell the hell out of it and it's very popular. But if you put that beer under the label of a hype brewery of any notation and said it was from them, people that would not even think about drinking that beer, or if they did, would say it was a boring amber lager, would talk about how amazing that beer was. because it has it is associated with that brewery. And this is nothing new. This is just marketing. Companies, clothing companies put out ugly and crappy styles, but because they've got a label on it that says, I don't know what a popular brand is, but you can imagine one.
Popular brand.
People will like it. A band that puts out shitty albums, but they have a reputation. People will forgive that music. There's
My Chemical Romance.
I
I used to like My Chemical Romance.
Okay.
No,
I've heard the name. I really don't even know who that is because I'm that old. But there's that's a normal thing that we see in every industry. That's not something that we should be surprised by. But it does take me aback when we're talking about those things. I want to get back to talking about the adjuncts, and you mentioned a couple things in your brewery that you like to do, that you do, right? You do cocoa nibs, you do coconut, right? That's a big candy bar ingredient for a lot of people. Talk about coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You were not a coffee guy for a long time. I know that. So
now I run on it.
Yeah. so I know that's been a change for you for sure. But is there a list of ingredients? And I'm not expecting you to rattle off 40, but is there a list of ingredients that you're like, okay, this is appropriate in beer? And are there other things other than marshmallow that you're just like, hard no? If you say this isn't a beer, I want nothing to do with it.
I mean, I'm for the most part across the board that fruit is cool in beer. I think that practically any fruit can be applied into a certain style of beer that works with it. It like not just like sours, but like fucking raspberry or cherry in dark beers, stouts, dark Belgian beers. I think are fantastic. Citrus peel in IPAs, pale ales, even like a pilsner or a light lager. When I was in PA, we made a lime light lager with just a shit ton of lime peel, and it was fucking delicious. And like just taking that concept of a lime and a pale lager and just making that be the beer was delicious. I think fruit in saisons, fruit in other Belgian styles, like just a Belgian pale, can be fantastic. I what like that I am not a big extract person.
Mm-hmm.
I have used them at different places throughout my career. Oftentimes begrudgingly. I get where they work and where they are best applied, and I do not hate them as much as I used to. I used to be a very like hard no on extracts. If it were my brewery, like completely everything to do with it, I would never touch this stuff. Like, because I wouldn't be making beers that really require that. Like if there's fruit in it, there's enough for it to do its thing. And I'm also a person who wants to work with people who produce the fruit and build relationships and blah blah blah. That's not the point. But I'm for the most part not a fan of extracts. I don't like them in there. That's another thing that I feel like I have learned. A lot of these breweries are using extracts, and they're not putting that on their labels that they are using extracts. They're not putting that out there. And not that they have to necessarily say that there's an extract, but I don't see natural flavor, artificial flavor, or whatever on their label because they're probably not getting their formula approval from the TTB, let alone their label approval. But some of those things, I can taste them and be like, yep, that's fucking extract. Because probably the biggest one is maple. You can't put maple into a beer, maple syrup into a beer, and because maple syrup doesn't taste like what we think maple syrup tastes like. Like real,
Especially post fermentation, it doesn't.
yeah. Like maple syrup just is sugar. It's it's like it just tastes sweet. And but what our minds have constructed of maple syrup is like Mrs. Butterworth's Aunt Jemima, that type of stuff. And there's extracts that taste like that stuff that get put into these beers to round them out, to really give you that idea of maple syrup flavoring. They probably did put maple syrup in it. It fermented out. But to really have that taste of it, they're using extracts.
And some people do actually use it because they want to be able to say that they actually use that ingredient, but other people just don't. I mean, I experimented early on with maple syrup. Didn't do anything. So we had to go the extract route. And by the way, maple extract can be really good. There are certain extracts that have a chemically flavor, and there are certain extracts that give genuine flavor when used in the right dosage and with the right mixture of other ingredients, and they can work really, really well. I have still a open mind to extracts and say when it's the right time, I'm okay with them. But I have really done a 180 on a lot of the synthetic extracty compounds kind of stuff in the last year or so, and a lot with the directions of the team and the brewery of Joel and Ralph and Ben of realizing like let's try to do this with real ingredients when we can. And there might be something that is a staple beer or something that is just not feasible. We can't get that volume, we can't get the price, and the beer's good as the way we like it. Fine, we'll use this. But when it comes to the next beer that we're doing, I'll just give you a simple example. We did and this is 3 slims every year, our ginger triple. We used amaretti ginger compound for years, and it was fine. I don't think it was off-putting. I don't think it was chemically, but real ginger just tastes better. But then you got to get the ginger, you got to slice it up, you got to do this. All you got to do is do about a tablespoon into a brink and jump beer on top of it, and it's immediate. There's no mess, no fuss. So I was comfortable doing that. In the last year or so, we said, we're not going to do that anymore. I'll just get some ginger and we'll use real ginger. I'm going back to that because I am seeing that those beers are better with the natural ingredients for the most part. There's still a place for them in our brewery. There always will be. But, maybe that's the traditionalist in me coming out.
Also, maybe not wholly on your reasoning, but I know that those amaretti things are fucking expensive, and for something that you might only make 3 slims of a year, why spend all the money on whatever their smallest package is that isn't even going to make a dent into what you're using it for? Like, if you're only using a tablespoon per keg, then you still have all this left over that you spent a couple $100 on.
And that might be why sometimes people use too much and just say, screw it, we'll go overboard with it because we don't want to hold on to this thing till the next year. And that's when things just get, there's the idea of a top note that can be added to something. I think that overall, one of the things that you and I will agree on is that just the overabundance of one flavor, if that's your only goal, you're probably not doing it right for us. For other people love it. God bless them, right? But for me, if a beer tastes like one thing, I'm not really going to enjoy it very much. It's not going to be my thing. I want to talk quickly, and I know I've mentioned this a couple times during this conversation about what is a beer and what is not a beer. Do you have a cutoff? Have you drank a beer recently? And you don't have to say what the brewery is. I know you usually give no shits about this, but have you have you drunk a beer recently or tried a beer and gone, man, that's just not beer?
I don't think so off the top of my head. Um, is more often than not, I'm not going to order that stuff. Um, if I'm at a brewery or at a bar or anything like that. Um, at these points, if I am going to take a risk on something like that, strangely enough, a lot of the time I'm going to buy a bottle or a can and take it home. The last episode, I had the beer from Hardywood Park that was the cookie butter beer that they make for Trader Joe's. That I was pleasantly surprised by. Like I bought a 4-pack of cans because that was all that they had available. You couldn't get a single can, so I was just like, you know what, fuck it. Um, and I have 1 can left, so I've drank 3 of them over the past few weeks. But there, the thing is, to me, I'm probably not of the uh, group that says that that's not beer. It is. I mean, it's what style of it is. Is it? It might be debatable, but I mean, it came from malted barley that was mashed. Hops are in there. It's fermented with yeast. Like, and it has alcohol in it of whatever amount that you say is in it. Might be wrong. Who cares? Or they don't care. But it is beer. They followed the technique of making beer. To me, it's not beer if it's because example, braggots are like a blend kind of beer and mead, right? Or is it
Sounds right to me.
okay? And but it has to be at least 51% beer in there in order for it to still be considered like a malt beverage beer, what is legally considered beer. And you know me, I like to look at what is legally the definition of things. So to me, these things are legally beer for the most part, I guess. Some of them from these sours, apparently they get damn near beer when they're like below 3%, below 2%. With all the juice that they're putting into it. If you're getting to that point, then yeah, you're probably in the ballpark of making that argument. But for the most part, yeah, these are beers. I'm not drinking most of them. If I do, I'll be like, hey, can I try a little bit of that? Ooh, that's a thing. Okay, I'll have this Pilsner, this IPA, this whatever. But yeah, I'm not gonna jump on that bandwagon and say that's not beer, but they are beers, but they're not beers that I particularly enjoy.
Mike, were you a Futurama fan?
Not really. Did
When
I
you
just do something?
No, when you were going through the whole thing about the percentages and about this, that, and the other, and technicalities, there's a whole episode about like the central bureaucracy, and and it doesn't matter. Anyone who's a Futurama fan will get this. Everybody else, just tune out for 12 seconds. But
I don't want to live on this planet anymore. That's basically all I know.
and that's a great one, and I've used that actually I think twice on this podcast. But there's there's an episode with the central bureaucracy and everything's about the technical aspects of everything. And at one point, one of the leaders of the central bureaucracy says, "That is technically correct," which is the best kind of correct. And as you were saying that, and most of the time when you're talking about the legalities of beer, I imagine you as that guy in Futurama about the technical correctness of the beer industry. I think you should be president.
I should be
beer.
the beer industry.
You should be president of all beer. And I'm not even talking about like the Brewers Association. Just you should be able to go around from brewery to brewery and go, that is not correct. That is not correct. That is not correct. I think that would. I'd love that.
Just yesterday.
Just please don't come to my brewery.
Just yesterday, I was going through my Instagram feed and I come across like these can designs and I'm like, that's not how alcohol is supposed to be put. Oh, that's not the right net contents. Oh, government label, government warning. That part's not bolded. And like, oh, the label issues on this beer. And I'm like, I should say something. And then my inner part of my brain is like, you do not say something. Like, but I want to. Yes,
All right,
we
Karen.
know that you want to.
Mike wants to speak to your manager. Yeah, I just wanted to. I did a whole Futurama aside, which was probably not necessary, but I do want to speak to the whole idea of, because I brought it up. I want to make sure I make it clear too. I am kind of in between you and many others. I don't think some of those things are beer to me. I have no problem with them existing. I'm not going to fight with people who enjoy them. But so many of these beers, I try and go, man, that doesn't resemble what I call beer. That doesn't resemble of what I enjoy in beer. But as you said, technically and in the process, this, that, and the other. And if people really like them and that's where the industry goes long term, that's where the industry goes long term. We get wrapped up very often in the fact that these are very small sects of people that are obsessed with these kind of styles. And in the greater beer world, people have no concept of their existence. And the beer industry is cyclical. Things come around. We've been talking about the proliferation of new pilsners and lagers now for 10 years. And yes, that's true. But I'm going into breweries these days and seeing nothing but 8 adjunct sweet beers on draft. Or going into beer bars and seeing, man, there's like 12 beers on draft and only 3 that I would consider drinking by reading the description. I'm seeing that as much as I ever have. And that just might be the difference between you and I and where we're going and the Facebook feed.
I go to
the
like
Instagram
5
feed.
places.
Well, I'm just saying, and also you mentioned about the curating your Instagram feed. Like you're following the
Yeah.
people you like. So you're finding the stuff that you enjoy. Whereas me, I feel like I'm being exposed to some of these beers more than ever now. It seems like it's more prevalent than ever to me. And the beers that people are bringing to my house, the beers that I'm trying out there in the market. And I do my best.
You let those people in your house?
Listen, I don't let many people in my house, but every now and then one slips through the moat and they make it across, and you have to be hospitable once they make it in.
You need to restock your moat with gators, right?
So some
they're dying
kind
off,
of,
or they're getting away.
some kind of ferocious sea creatures. But I do. No, you're going to make another joke. Go ahead.
Yes. You were saying earlier that you're like, I go through it and I'm like, no, that's not what I call beer. And I'm like, oh, so this is like Kevin's new album series. Now that's what I call beer. Or now that's not what I call beer. You're going to get up to like volume 302 of now that's what Kevin calls beer. We'll see how many people get that fucking joke.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's some old fucks like us out there. Listen, I also just want to put this out there. I said that it's important to point out our own hypocrisy, right? I have my career in this industry. I know you won't point your own out. I'll point mine out. I have my career in this industry based on a lot of these adjunct beers and a lot of beers that, looking back, are not my favorite things I've ever been involved with. But I like them at the time. I still think there's merit to those styles. Do I think the industry has gone a little too far in the one direction? The scales have tipped a little bit too far? I do. Technically, I do feel that way. But if people are enjoying what is being made, I got no qualms with me. It does hurt my feelings a bit when I put out, I don't do anything. I sit on my butt and do emails. When the guys in the back of our brewery, the talented people, make an incredible beer and put it out there and we get crickets because it's just a normal beer, it hurts my feelings. I go, this is a better beer than anything else we put out, and no one really cares about it, but we can put out an adjunct beer and people will lose their minds. That does bother me on some level. But that aspect of being like that old man yelling at a cloud and labeling, this is not okay, this isn't beer, I don't like it, so it's not good. I don't really want to be that guy. I need to make sure I rephrase that as saying, I don't have to like it, but I should not be saying this is garbage and you shouldn't like it. That's where I try to, in my personal life, be able to phrase things in that way.
Yeah, I think that's pretty a spot on thing. I think that my big issue a lot of the times with these things go like I'm going back to the fucking well on this, but I don't like the people being like hiding what it is that they're actually putting in there, like learning about from someone who worked at a hype brewery about how much extracts go into stuff, how much sulfites go into stuff. And it's like I'm happy that they're making a fucking shelf stable beer. Like good for them. But it's just I hate how they hide that information from the consumer, especially the sulfite thing, which needs to be legally like declared that if you're putting that into a beer. But it's just the lack of sincerity in what you're putting out there for your monetary gain. I fucking hate. And there's just like just be honest. Like be honest about fucking shit. And I maybe it's funny that the people who would probably condemn that, like if their client base would condemn that in them, I would just find hilarious that like you liked it fine before you knew how it was actually made. But I'm not going to hate people for liking it. I'm not going to hate people for making it because they're making it because people like it and people want it. And that's all fine and good. I don't have to. And that's like you said, I'll be over here enjoying the things that I enjoy. And, that's fine and dandy. Like I go to shout out to our friends Rachel and Jason who own Dixie Bar Grill and Brewery in West Palm Beach. I go there at least once a month. We get takeout from there a number of times. We sit out on the patio with the boys. The beers that they make are awesome, and then they have such a fantastic list of other beers on tap. And I'm always looking at the list, and it's like, all right, they got some weird pastry stouts, some over the top sours. Oh, they got main lunch. Okay, I'll have that. I find myself always going to an IPA or a Pilsner or a lager. Like their lager that they make there is fucking great. But I see it there. It's there because people want it. But I'm grateful that they also have stuff that I myself enjoy on a regular basis. So I get you, Kevin, that you go into a lot of places and there's just a ton. I mean, I can go to a brewery around the corner from me and see 15 hazies on tap, and I like their lagers the best. But you know, it's that different strokes for different folks thing.
You know, I never thought you'd be so democratic, Mike. I thought you at one point during this.
Who the fuck am I?
I thought at one
fuck
point
these assholes.
You were going to be the over the top. I'm going to scream and call you a motherfucker. I thought you were going to play the Joel role here, but you didn't. You straddled the fence with me, which I really appreciate. I usually get a lot of shit for doing that, so I appreciate you're sitting here with me.
Well, if we would have done the topic that we originally talked about potentially doing, then I would have called you a motherfucker, probably.
We're never doing that topic, just so you know. Don't tease the people with it either.
Oh, too late. Because I think it was said on air on the last episode. So,
well, maybe they'll throw it out there and force us to do it, and then I'll take the week off.
So it'll be me yelling at myself
There's
for an
plenty of
hour.
people. You can bring Phil Parmigiano back. Joel can do a guest experience if he
Guest
experience
experience.
guest experience.
Welcome to the United We Drink guest experience.
That works.
We
That
got
works.
we don't have
It's
a green
nonsense.
room.
It's nonsense, but it works. But listen,
You get to talk to Craig, the bear.
Joel can't just be doing Twitch 24 hours a day. I mean, I know he's probably monetized at this point and has 10 billion followers, but he has to be able to take some time out to, give you a little bit of time.
I mean, he will be on our third annual Christmas fundraiser live stream that we're doing with our friends Bitter Units on Saturday, December 10th, over on our YouTube channel. Go check that out. But yeah, I mean, that's the best segue that I'm ever going to have in my life. I quit.
Just end the show.
Anything else that you want to beat of the dead horse that is Adjuncts?
I want to reiterate one thing, and this is not just for beer. This should be my last call, but it won't be. It's just that in general, try to find the good in anything you don't like, and try to see what other people see in it, whether that be music or TV or whatever it is. Because as we get older, we do tend to like our own stuff and assume that the new stuff is kind of crap. So I think it's important to look at this stuff with an open mind, but also to be true to yourself. If you don't like something, say you don't like it, but don't condemn someone else for liking it. Or don't condemn someone else for liking it, but make snarky jokes on a podcast for several years.
Condemn yourself for not liking it.
That too.
There. Yeah, that works. All right. Time for last calls. The point in the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want, uninterrupted, unopposed, unobjected. Kevin, you want to start things off here? You're looking around your room like someone's going to murder you.
There's always that possibility. Mike, it is entering the Christmas season. By the time this episode comes out, we will be well into December, I believe, if I understand the timeline of these whole things. And I just love Christmas. One of my favorite things to do is to put up Christmas lights and to take my 4.5-year-old, soon to be 5-year-old son out to look at Christmas lights and inflatables and just soak in the Christmas season. And I pretend that we put up tons of Christmas lights because of him, but really has nothing to do with him. I'd be doing if he wasn't here, because I just love it. I love Christmas lights. I love twinkly, shiny things. I love gaudy expressions of festiveness. I love Christmas music. This is my favorite time of year, and I just encourage everybody to enjoy this time of year. If you do have kids, you don't need my help on this, but just to drive the point home, enjoy every moment of this, because we have like a few years. I think every year I'm sitting there going, my son's going to be 5. 10 years from now, he's not going to give a shit about this anymore. He's not going to care about me. He's not going to care about the lights. He's going to be off with his friends going, I don't care about any of this, Dad. Leave the presents under the tree. I'll open them in January. Right? So I've got a short period of time to enjoy this world through his eyes. I'm going to lap up every moment of it, because even before he came, this was just a time of year that I look forward to like no other. So, happy Festivus to us all.
Yay. I'll talk to you off air about more of that. I had like 3 different things, so now I got to pick one. I am super stoked that today came out the Spotify wrap-ups which is the little things that tell you pretty much your stats on Spotify at the end of the year, like who you listen to the most and what song, like your top 5 artists, your top 5 songs. They build a playlist based off of your listens, and they even like give you stats based off of against other people. Like if you're in the top however much percentage of whatever. And I made myself a very silly goal earlier this year that I would be in the top 5% of listeners to my favorite band, Botch, who just came back to Spotify after a like year and a half absence from the platform earlier this year. And I am happy to say that I am in the top 2% of listeners of my favorite band of all time. Um, I think that this is probably my third last call about Botch in the last 3 months. But if you haven't listened to Botch yet, go listen to them if you're into metal or hardcore music, because that's what they are. If you aren't, then don't do it. You're not going to enjoy it. But I'll go and listen to them some more for you. So maybe I can break into that 1% next year, because, set yourself goals and shit like that. Uh, but in the meantime, you can go check me out on Twitter as long as it's still there at Mike Loves Beer. I'm also on Instagram. Oh, I started selling prints of my photography. Um, it's not a really easy URL, but if you go to my Instagram at Mike Loves Beer, on my profile, I have a link to where you can buy prints of my photos and stuff like that. Also, before Kevin gets his plugs in, I alluded to it earlier. Our third annual Christmas fundraiser live stream with our friends from Bitter Units is coming up by when this episode drops on December 7th. It's on December 10th, Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern on our YouTube. We will be raising money for Feeding America. We are really looking forward to this. Last year, we raised $1,310, and we are hoping to hit $1,500 this year. This means a whole lot to us to be able to raise money for such an awesome charity. We are currently accepting donations. So if you go to our website, unitedwedrink.com, and go to the blog, there is a post about the live stream there with a link to the fundraiser page where you can donate there. If you can't make the live stream, you can donate anyway. So please go do that. And we are looking forward to seeing you all out on the 10th, hanging out. We'll be drinking beers. We'll be drinking probably a lot of other beverages and having a good time. Some guests, former guests of the show, coming on and hanging out. It'll be a good time. Kevin, what do you want to plug?
Mike, when is this episode actually coming out?
This episode is dropping on December 7th.
December 7th. That's perfect. So you will have enough time when you're hearing this if you're living in South Florida, come by our Christmas party at Barrel of Monks, where we will have the rye barrel version of our Father Christmas released. Father Christmas, Belgian spiced dark strong ale. It's one of our most popular beers every year. It's a really good beer. I brined my turkey in that beer this Thanksgiving. It turned out amazing. So we'd love to see you at Barrel of Monks. But I will say this, and what you said about the charity fundraiser for the podcast. When you have groups, whether it's your office or your family, and as you get a little bit older, as the kids get a little bit older, you still want to give gifts. White elephants really suck. No one likes what they get. It's always a stressful thing as do I go over $30 or $35 or whatever it is. Don't do that anymore. Just donate to a charity in the name of the person that you pick from the hat. that is a great way to send $35 or $40 or $50 or whatever it is to a good cause. It's $50. You were going to spend it on a gift anyway that someone wasn't going to like. Someone's going to trade and get upset because they got a calendar with kittens on it, or a, whatever, a GPS tracker keychain. They don't want that. No one does. Take $50, donate to a charity in their name. Everyone will be happier, and then you enjoy the festivities. It's a good thing to do. That's my plug.
Kevin just had another last call. In there.
That was a plug. It was a plug to do something else.
If you want to follow the show, follow us at United We Drink on Twitter, at United We Drink Pod on Instagram. We're on all of the major podcast streaming services and apps. So if you're brand new to us, go to your podcast app, find the show, subscribe to us, and therefore brand new episodes will come to your app of choice every other week on it's not the 7th, it's the 8th. Is when we do Thursday drops.
Well,
that's right.
It's all screwed now. It's all screwed.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for, is to fuck over Kevin. We did Wednesday last week because it was Thanksgiving on Thursday.
Makes sense.
But if you want to follow us on those things, do that. Otherwise, we will be back. Let's see. Can't fucking work this fucking thing.
We were almost a professional podcast for like 5 minutes in the middle of this show, and we have found a way to destroy all of that.
We do have one more episode coming out before Christmas, so I don't have to say Merry Christmas to you all just yet. But Merry Christmas anyway. We'll be back in a couple weeks. See us at the live stream on YouTube on the 10th, hanging out with Bitter Units. And cheers.
Cheers.
No, try again.
It's 10 o'clock. Good evening. This is The World Tonight with Ritula Shah. Ed Miliband's ruled out a coalition with the Scottish Nationalists if there's a hung parliament.
View the source.